to mind when you hear the word boundary? Is it something physical, like a wall, a door, a gate, something that you use to fence off or block, barricade? Or is it more of a feeling that rises within you? Perhaps it's a feeling of discomfort. There might be a tightening of the chest or some part of the body when you hear that word. Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. If you have a tendency to struggle with setting boundaries in your relationships, stick around. This video is for you. Before I get started, let me take a moment and briefly introduce myself. Hello, my name is Marissa Senya, and I am a freedom coach. I help women who are feeling trapped or stuck in unhealthy or toxic relationships gain the confidence, clarity, and support that they need in order to make a peaceful exit from relationship dynamics that no longer serve them. And so today, this topic that is very relevant to this work, this meaningful work that I do, is setting boundaries, and why some of us, a lot of us, particularly as women, may struggle with setting boundaries with people in our lives. So, typically we all set boundaries and adhere to boundaries every single day of our lives, believe it or not. We see the benefit of boundaries. I mentioned earlier the concept of the physical boundaries, and that is something that we all subscribe to on some level. We do that when we come home and we close or lock the door behind us. We are setting some sort of protection from any outside force or element to not come into our home. That's something we all subscribe to, which is why there are locks on our doors, even within the home, right? And then another physical boundary that we have no problem, for the most part, adhering to are the physical ones of driving. You get in your car, you lock the door, you fasten your seatbelt. That's a boundary. It's going to keep you safe and secure while you're making this trip. And while you're driving, you are subscribing to another boundary of staying in your lane, right? You're not moving in and out of lanes without notifying the others because you are subscribing to that boundary of being safe. Following these rules keep you safe. For the most part, we all subscribe to those boundaries and we don't think twice about them on a day-to-day basis. Yet, when it comes to practicing boundaries that are on a relational level, how we relate to the people in our lives, be it a romantic partner, family members, colleagues, so forth, therein lies a greater struggle. It becomes a lot more difficult to subscribe to boundaries that help to maintain healthy relationships with some of these people in our lives. I think for us as women, particularly if we have grown up in Eastern cultures, there is an emphasis on the collective, right? And being part of the community and making sure that the communal needs are met and what is in the best interest of those around us. And so thinking about this sense of the individual is something that can be frowned upon or something that is minimized, especially for women. And even when you do grow up in a Western society where there tends to be an emphasis on the individual, we still see that women in particular struggle with setting boundaries that are healthy and that protect themselves in relationship to other people. This is a struggle. So it really doesn't matter what part of the world you're in. boundaries seem to be an issue for women at some point in our lives, myself included, to say, okay, so let's unpack this concept a bit and why it might be a struggle for us, right? We've talked about, where we come from and the conditioning. So regardless of Eastern or Western culture, or what's Northern Hemisphere or Southern Hemisphere, there is going to be this wrestling with how do I honor my own values? How do I make greater space for what is important to me and not compromise these things that are really, really, I hold dear to myself. The problem with that question is sometimes is that we don't have the answer to another question. Well, what do I value? And how can I find out what's important to me if that's not encouraged, if I'm not in an environment that encourages that? Then it becomes harder to set these boundaries. Suddenly you are in relationship dynamics that are unhealthy. You're being spoken to in a way that is hurtful and brings you pain, and yet you keep showing up and keep trying to make a situation or a relationship dynamic work when you are not being spoken to respectfully in that dynamic. There's still this instinct to push aside and show up anyway and try to make something much more appeasing and beneficial because that is what you have been programmed to do. Here's the benefit and the importance of having relational boundaries. Okay, not only is it about separating ourselves from behaviors or people or spaces that may be harmful for us, what we tend to minimize or forget about boundaries is that it's a great way for us to connect to ourselves. When we set those boundaries, we get a chance to understand, okay, well, this didn't feel good to me. I don't completely have the language for it. I just know how my body reacted when this person spoke to me in this way, or when this person suggested that I do X, Y, and Z for them. It did not feel good to me. Why is that, right? So that becomes this journey that we get to go on to discover our own values, and we get to have greater insight on who we are. And then it increases our awareness of our do's and our don'ts. And when we have a better understanding of who we are, then we can show up to those relationships as a healthier, more whole individual. And then you can also be on a path where you are attracting people that are more in alignment with who you are and who you are discovering yourself to be. But if you don't set those boundaries, if you don't honor that feeling of discomfort when somebody maybe crosses a line that just didn't feel good to you, then you're not showing compassion to yourself. You're not loving yourself well. And one of the key things in order to be able to be somebody that loves others well is being able to love yourself well, is being able to show compassion towards yourself. It's being able to listen to your own needs. But unfortunately, with this programming of women on a global scale, the practice is to meet the needs of others, is to meet the needs of the collective, to meet the needs of the partner, and a lot of times at the expense of our own. And so the first way that we get to rectify that, to say enough of that, we're going to break out of this pattern, we're going to break out of this cycle, is to start to honor our own personal boundaries, our own personal needs, and saying, this is a need for me. I value being spoken to in a respectful manner. This is what respectful is to me. This is what disrespect is to me. And that can differ from person to person. But what matters most here is understanding what is important to you in a relationship, and what you can say yes to, and what is a no, and what you will not tolerate. And that comes with curiosity. It comes with listening to yourself, and it comes with honoring that voice within that says, pause. This doesn't feel good. Pause. Take a moment, sis. That's how we start to honor our own personal boundaries, is by listening and not dismissing and not minimizing those feelings and those thoughts when they come up in our relationships. So, boundaries are something that, is something that we will need to work on for the rest of our lives, myself included. But the beauty of it is that you are better for it. You know yourself more. It increases your confidence, and you get to bring that full, whole self into a relationship, and it becomes healthier because you have a healthy relationship with yourself. But if there's already this imbalance of minimizing and dismissing your own needs and your own wants, chances are you're going to bring that into a relationship and be dissatisfied in a relationship dynamic. And we don't want that. We don't want that. So let's honor those promptings. Let's honor that inner dialogue in ourselves, that voice that tells us, take a listen, pause, don't accept that. Let's honor that by setting healthy boundaries today. So if this content resonated with you, please make sure that you are liking and you're subscribing to this channel. And also feel free to share this content with another woman or person that you might know that would really benefit from hearing, some real talk on boundaries today. Until next time, keep well.